Man, I'm getting killed here. You gotta help me out a little.
Boom!
Ahhh Brute Force. Or you know, that game there was a trailer for on the demo section of Halo. And if all you saw of Brute Force was that trailer, then you might imagine this game being sort of a tactical, special ops type game with last minute escapes and movie-like moments. At least that's what we all thought at the time. Instead, it turned out that Brute Force is kind of more of a mindless run and gun with your buddies type game, which hey, you know, isn't exactly a bad thing, right? But the hype for it, due to this marketing push it had, really made it one of the hottest selling games in the early Xbox days. In fact, on release, it actually broke all prior Xbox sales records, beating out even juggernauts like Halo CE. And it's not too surprising about how they managed to accomplish this when you look at some of these awesome trailers for the game, as well as look at some of these older articles written about Brute Force leading up to its release. Brute Force is far and away the best showcase of the graphical possibilities on the Xbox. Character models that seem to have more polygons and animate better than you do. An abundance of hypnotic particle effects that are infinitely more fascinating to watch than the latest reality television show. Honestly, the graphics for this game really do hold up really well considering it was released back in 2003. I mean, for the time, everyone really was just obsessed with just how good this game actually looked. I mean, just check out this old IGN article on it. Over the last year or so, a smattering of screenshots of the game have been released, with much of the public's first impressions being that the screens were either renders or had been altered in some way to make them look as polished as they were. Well, everyone was wrong. Having witnessed the game firsthand, we can assure you that every screen that you have seen of Brute Force was taken in-game. You hear that? This screenshot right here is actual in-game footage. I know, shocking. Along with the constant media hype around the game's graphics, one of the other big talking points was actually how similar it would play to everyone's favorite Halo. From the two-weapon system, the aiming, the controls for swapping weapons and using grenades, hell, even the radar, were all heavily modeled after Halo. And I know a lot of this stuff might seem commonplace now, but for the time, this was still pretty unique stuff. Overall, people were very impressed with the marketing for this game, from the badass trailers, the amazing looking screenshots, the promise of Halo-style controls, just real solid stuff. Unfortunately, opinions did change after its release, with one of my favorite reviews for the game coming from XPlay calling the game as bland as a bag of groceries, which is not entirely unfair when you really sit down and look at it. For example, does it have a deep story?
The Shrikes head to Caspian, fuel their ships, and demolish Earth.
What about any complex characters?
He has betrayed his pack. He shall suffer.
Okay.
Any revolutionary gameplay mechanics? Okay, so it goes without saying, Brute Force is kind of a shallow game. However, underneath its admittedly simplistic shell is a very enjoyable game, even more so when actually playing with some friends. You see, one of the most fun aspects of this game is how if you aren't just a lonely sack of shit like me, then each one of you can actually play as different characters, each with their own stats and special abilities. Now, most of the footage I have for the game is solo because, well, none of my friends really live close to me anymore.
Hell.
But I still have so many fond memories of us playing through this game together multiple times, finding every secret character from multiplayer and just dicking around and killing aliens while one of my buddies would just run around in circles as a lizard man in Predator mode. All of this is not to say you can't enjoy it playing solo, but just hopping on with some friends for even just a few minutes, you'll see that this is what the game was really meant for. At its core, Brute Force really is a couch co-op game, from how the characters operate with one another to how missions are set up to just let you chaotically run into action if you choose, which, let's face it, will probably happen if you're playing with a bunch of friends. Luckily, if your idiot friend does just run right ahead into the enemy without you and gets themselves killed, death is not the end for them. So long as there's another squad member alive, they can just take over them instead. And if worse comes to worse and you all die, then you can just respawn the entire squad at the last checkpoint. Speaking of the squad, we should probably first take a look at the team members that make up Brute Force. The first member of the team, and arguably the best, is Tex, voiced by Richard Green, who you might actually know as Vito Santiago from Mass Effect 2.
What was that? Gone nearsighted, old friend.
Burn, you son of a bitch.
Tex is pretty much the team's muscle, every level spawning in with 2 heavy weapons and whose special ability is actually dual wielding both of them, which is insanely powerful when you have something like 2 miniguns or a shotgun and a rocket launcher or any other crazy assortment of weapons. He also has the largest health bar of all the characters, letting him pretty much tank damage for everyone else. To be honest, he's pretty much everyone's just bread and butter. Whoever is first player will almost always choose to play as Tex because he's pretty much good at any situation the game throws at you. Really, the only downside of Tex is that he's so good you might get a little overconfident and get yourself killed in a stupid way. But frankly, if Tex goes down, 9 times out of 10, it's your fault. The next squad mate you get is the iconic lizard crocodile man himself, Brutus. And let's be real, a lot of people bought this game all because of Brutus alone. His species is more of like a tribal race that lives in the trees, kind of like the Wookiees, and frankly, just as violent. He's voiced by a relatively unknown actor named Kevin Dorsey, who is actually more known as a vocalist for movies like Star Wars, Spider-Man, Lion King, and a long list of other just iconic movies. And even though this is one of his only voice acting gigs he's actually done, he really just knocks it out of the park with his performance.
It is good omen that we meet over death, Tex.
I'll take your word on that one.
We are one of the same pack now. We fight together. We die together.
I'm with the fighting part.
Man, I could listen to him talk all day. Brutus acts as a good middle ground for Tex and some of the more physically weak members of the team. He holds 1 heavy weapon and 1 medium weapon, normally starting off most missions with his trusty shotgun, which, thanks to his special ability, he can easily close the distance on and use. Now, his special ability is a little different compared to everyone else's. While everyone else's is kind of more based, I guess, in reality, his special ability is channeling the spirits of his ancestors to help him get an increase in speed, health regen, and this awesome predator vision. He also can just run through enemies, practically one-shotting them when his special is activated. However, this aspect of his ability kind of loses most of its effectiveness in some of the later levels. So this is Hawk, your typical quick and nimble stealth character, voiced by Susan Eisenberg, who is now a very accomplished voice actress known for roles like Wonder Woman, Shakti, The Guardians, and Destiny, and like Tex's voice actor, is also in the Mass Effect series as the Asari Counselor. Just a really good resume, that one. Now, to be honest, I've always thought Hawk got a little bit too much hate from a lot of players. Yeah, she's weak as hell defense-wise and can't carry any power weapons like Tex and Brutus. However, if you're just running into combat with her, that's frankly your fault. Her best feature, well, besides the obvious, is her stealth mode in Power Blade. By going stealth and sneaking behind the enemies, you can take out quite a few of them before your stealth field ever runs out. And a few of the later levels will have enemies in some really entrenched positions, and if you're playing on hard, then the stealth mode will be one of your best bets for taking them out. Just don't get hit with anything stronger than a slap, because, oh boy, her health is definitely low. Now, of course, you can't have a squad-based shooter without a good marksman, or woman in this case. Actually, she's a synthetic, so cyborg, really.
Artificial and a woman. Bratton.
Flint is voiced by Monet Michiel, a somewhat successful actress who has played bit parts in many popular shows you probably have seen. However, this is one of only 2 video games she's actually ever worked on, with the second being Freedom First Resistance, which I can't say I've ever heard of. Flynn is a pretty niche member of the team. Low health, not as bad as Hawk's, but still very low, and no ability to use any power weapons other than her sniper rifle, which really isn't that great in most situations since many of the enemies can be pretty spongy and take like 3 rounds before going down. Now her special is actually pretty decent, granting the ability to auto-lock onto enemies with the sniper, which does come in handy in some of the later missions where you have enemies firing at you with rockets far away. However, in almost every other situation the game throws at you, you're better off playing as pretty much anyone else. Overall, the whole squad actually works really well together, with each member of the team really getting their own moments to shine, at least if you're playing on the higher difficulty. If not, then it kinda just becomes the Tex gun show. The year is 2340. Humanity has begun colonizing space and has created the Confederation Republic, a combination of multiple planets and species. Since much of the galaxy is still unexplored at this point, the Confederation has created a crack squad of border agents to defend known space from the unknown fringes. Leading up this effort is Commander Bratton, who begins to assemble a team of unlikely squad mates, of course starting with Tex. And I've gotta just say, these cutscenes still just hold up really well.
Reporting for duty, Commander Bratton.
Sorry we haven't had much time for formalities. We have a situation, and you're the man to resolve it.
I'm used to it, sir.
Oh, and by the way, if Bratton's voice sounds familiar, it's because he's also one of the greatest video game allies of all time.
I have earned that Rex, and this is my planet!
That's right, it's Stephen Barr, another Mass Effect alumni. I don't know what's with this game, but over like half the cast seems to have gone on to do roles in the Mass Effect series. Either way, the story starts off simple enough, with us watching Tex getting left behind by his old squad as an alien chokes him out and, well, kills him.
I hear you, you son of a...
Yeah, so it turns out humanity has kind of found a way to overcome death by inventing flash cloning, which is actually how you respawn if your squad ends up getting wiped. Because of this, each character's intro is actually their last death, which makes for some really good cutscenes actually. Now, one of the problems though with the overall story is how only about 1/3 of the missions in the game actually move the plot forward at all in any meaningful way, with the rest just kind of being filler to pad out the game. And that's not to say these filler missions are bad or anything, they just really slow things down and really just kind of overstay their welcome most times. The majority of filler missions will either be against mercenaries or mutants, which Bratton really doesn't seem to care for too much.
We can assume that all mutants are hostile, or at least expendable.
They try to have some story elements in these levels, however they can be pretty much removed entirely and not much would actually change. The mercenary-based missions usually play out pretty simple, with you just having to kill everyone around or just blow stuff up. And the enemies themselves, really to be honest, are nothing to write home about. Just your generic mercenary soldiers. You know the type. Now the mutant levels are at least a little bit more unique and creative, with the mutants kind of just being these big, dumb, aggressive bastards who use mostly pistols, hand grenades, and sometimes will just run at you like a suicide grunt. To be honest, I actually really do enjoy a lot of the mutant levels quite a bit, even if these two factions almost have no real relevance to the story overall, however. When it comes to the actual main plot line, it kind of more starts off with a group of feral outcasts attacking Brutus's tribe on the planet Ferrix. And after saving the tribe and rescuing Brutus, we find out the outcast tribe have some advanced weaponry on them, and also some kind of weird alien doodad.
Bratton, I've got some alien doodad here.
Like I said before, the lizardmen are pretty much just like Wookiees, and this level really shows it. The outcasts are pretty fun to fight overall, especially as the game goes on and they begin to consistently start using heavier weapons like the miniguns, ensuring that Tex always has an ample supply of ammo available to him. They also have a really nasty habit of trying to set up little ambushes for you, so just be careful when running around all nonchalantly. It is later found out that the doodad came from a race of seers called the Sword of Shadoon. The Seers are a race of mind readers who use psychic attacks and can teleport all around and are pretty interesting to actually fight overall. And as you might have guessed, the Seers are commanded by a leader named Shadoon, who has turned the relatively peaceful species into a deadly force. Luckily, a defector with a face only a mother could love, good God, has actually agreed to help us if we can get him off planet. And it's here where we also get our third member of the team, Hawk, even though it's pretty clear that Tex isn't too enthusiastic about the idea.
I've seen your file, Tex. You've got a hell of a record.
Files are for paper pushers, Hawk.
While fighting the mercenaries and the outcast are pretty straightforward, the Seers are a little bit more creative with the way they kind of do things. They come in three main forms: the grunts that can be easily killed and shoot fireballs at you, the captains who teleport a lot when attacked and have of course more health, and the firehounds, which are these little bastards that hop out of lava pits and frankly can wipe out your squad faster than you can blink on hard mode. The lava world aesthetic is pretty cool with some interesting mechanics like destroying the Seers' teleportation towers to make sure they can't just sit there and teleport away from combat. Overall, the gameplay remains pretty fun throughout. Towards the end of the mission, we get our first interaction with the big bad, and damn is his voice actor good.
Am I so important now as to receive guests from the Confederation? I trust you had a warm reception. I wish I could greet you myself, but I think my priests can do just as well.
Shadoon was voiced by Charles Dennis, who was also in, can you guess it? That's right, Mass Effect. He actually played Rear Admiral Mikhailovich in the first game. Plus, he was in one of my all-time favorite games, Knights of the Old Republic, playing Kingpin Davik Kang.
Sorry, but that ain't gonna happen.
Unfortunately, this is where the story begins to drag / become almost non-existent half the time. Remember when I mentioned that Brute Force has a lot of filler? It really starts to show here. I mean, I haven't seen this much filler since I tried to sit down and watch every episode of Naruto. The next three missions have almost nothing to do with the main plot at all, just mindlessly killing mercs, mutants, and outcasts. But hey, at least we finally get Flint on our team so we can actually make use of her, assets. Eventually, we remember, shit's going down with the Seers, so back we go to Osiris to take down one of Shadoon's transmitters. Unfortunately, instead of going right after the big bad himself, we go right back to filler.
We're going back to Ferrix.
My home.
We? You going with us this time?
What are you getting at, Hawk? Tex ain't wrong here. We've been here like 3 times now. The fuck's with this planet? And why is Flint acting like we haven't been here before? We were literally here just 2 missions ago.
Nice planet, Brutus. The weather sucks. Like shooting reptiles in a barrel.
Okay, to be fair, they try and connect it to the story by saying a Seer ship went down here and so we gotta go and check it out. And we do find Seer leaders commanding the outcast, but this is pretty much info we already know. Remember the weird alien doodad that came from the Seers in the first place? All I'm saying is a lot of these missions just kind of feel like afterthoughts because they realized, hey, the main story was way too short.
It's time to deal with Shadoon.
Oh, thank God, it's about time. So Shadoon's level is actually kind of interesting. First, you actually get to fight through some just basic enemies like normal and actually save some Marines who ended up locating Shadoon in the first place. And afterwards, you end up going into the caverns and finding his inner sanctum. And I just have to say, these caverns and just inner sanctum in general really do feel pretty unique compared to the rest of the game. Seer captains and firehounds are everywhere, and Shadoon himself is just floating in a dome in the middle of the arena that you have to actually go around and end up shooting its, its power cores, I guess. But after circling the arena and bringing down the dome, we finally get a chance to take down Shadoon.
Who dares defile my dome? Grenade! Grenade!
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, the first time he ragdolled like that, I actually thought I'd won just somehow just super easily, but really he just teleported away. I don't know why his body just sits there, but oh well. The point is, this is where the fight really begins. As you chase him around the arena, he starts summoning seers and firehounds galore as he just starts teleporting away anytime you start landing any real shots on him. And though he puts up one hell of a fight, through the power of flash cloning, we finally prevail.
Mission accomplished. Well done. Return promptly. I thought this would be time for a celebration. It's not.
So as you might have figured out now, Shadoon is not actually the big bad. In fact, he's killed right at the 2/3 part of the game. The good part is, in some ways, this is where the filler missions kind of stop happening and the story actually starts to pick up slightly. We find out that a satellite on the edge of known space has been hacked and has crashed on a volcanic moon. And after fighting some mercenaries to recover the info, we find out a mercenary leader named McTavish has actually been secretly sending signals to someone outside of the star system, making this actually one of the first times that the mercenaries have had an importance to the story. Oh, and there's some weird history between McTavish and Flint.
Let's go.
How do you know McTavish?
He was one of the early model synthetics. He sabotaged the projects and they slaughtered us like animals. All synthetics know him. All that are left.
The level is actually one of the more fun mercenary levels in my opinion, though the boss fight is kind of bland when you realize he's just kind of a giant bullet sponge. So it turns out Shadoon and many of the enemies we've been facing in the game have actually secretly been in contact with someone or something on an asteroid on the edge of the void. And going there, we finally get a look at our true enemy, the Shrike. The Shrike are an interesting species look-wise, kind of reminding me of the elites from Halo, and they incorporate a couple of the strategies that the prior enemies have actually been using throughout the game. They have a lot of the standard gunplay like the Mercs, while also being able to teleport like the Seers, plus they carry a lot of heavy weapons like the Outcast, especially rocket launchers. The asteroid they're located on also feels very alien, which works really well as the final environment to actually be fighting in. So fighting the Shrike can be pretty interesting overall. The asteroid allows for a lot of long-range combat on the surface, with some heavy close-range combat in the underground tunnels. The only real downside here is the asteroid levels really seem to just kind of go on for too long. Like, really long. I mean, the combat is fun and the level really does feel interesting with some novelties like hackable turrets and alien bombing runs, but it just really overstays its welcome. Eventually though, we do end up finding the real big bad and kind of just chase him down before he just hops on his ship and just fucks on out of there, finally completing this just long ass level.
Hawk, you alright?
What was that?
Yeah.
Brutus?
I got a
Calm
milk.
down.
What the hell were they, sir?
I love how in the cutscene they're all like, what the fuck was that? And panicking over it like we didn't just march around that asteroid slaughtering everything that moved for like 30 minutes straight. Either way, we found out that the asteroid is only an outpost for a future Strike invasion, and unfortunately the real military can't get to the system anytime soon, so it's pretty much up to Space Border Patrol to put a stop to it the best we can. The good part is that even the two sort of filler missions we have next are actually kind of tied more to the story than the others really were. Now fighting off the initial Shrike force as they are setting up outposts on planets we've already fought on, it kind of gives you the chance to kind of learn how to fight the Shrike better on more familiar ground actually. And going through these levels that you've already kind of played on, but having the added effect of the Shrike teleporting in or just these kind of different objectives are actually pretty good.
The entire Shrike invasion force is due to arrive within days. The Confederation's only hope for defense is to destroy that outpost on LB-429 before they fortify it. We make the difference.
So remember when I said the first asteroid level was long? Yeah, well, strap in because this one is pretty much a straight hour of just slowly making it through encounter after encounter. And they really do just throw everything at you here. Close, medium, long-range combat, turrets pinning you down, rocket troopers everywhere, even in the sky it seems like, shield generators with troops packed in, and to round it all out, of course, a boss fight with the new big bad Shrike leader. The main objective of the level is actually just to take down the asteroid shield generators to help make an opening for the flyboys to come in and just take the outpost out altogether. And man, is it just a time trying to make your way there. tons of heavy troopers that are just total bullet sponges, pinning you down left and right. Every time you're in an opening, you can pretty much be guaranteed a rocket trooper will be messing you up from a tower up above, and frankly, only Flint's sniper rifle is really an effective way of dealing with it, so if she's dead, you know, just screw your team, I guess. And man, those turrets, I swear to God, they have no chill, just firing at you from across the map non-stop. But after all of that, you finally make it over to the shield generators, and the Shrike are just entrenched in, so you kind of get a chance to be a bit more tactful with your approach. One of the best moves, I think, is still to probably just send in a Cloaked Hawk and just let her slice her way through a bunch of them before storming in. But then again, this is brute force, so really, if you just want to run in there with techs guns a-blazing, hey, it's an option. The boss fight is at least a little different than just pump them full of lead like everything has been up to this point. Instead, every time he takes enough damage, he'll go and heal in a shielded area. So what you have to do is find and disable the shield, and then find an asteroid control panel, so when he flees and hides, you can actually drop one right on top of him. It's pretty simple, but the fact he's firing rockets at you the whole time does make it a little bit more difficult than you might think, on hard mode at least. Either way, after enough tries and respawns, you can finally drop that asteroid right on top of him, activating, of course, the, frankly, best cutscene of the game.
Shield generators are down, brute force is secure. Gamma Wing, make it hurt. Aye, aye, sir. Inbound hitters, stand by for the pain.
Okay, with as cool as that cutscene is, it's kind of an abrupt ending, right? I mean, after all of that, the game just ends without so much as a howdy do. No scene where the squad is together celebrating, or even a last-minute escape off the asteroid, which would have been pretty cool. Though, I guess at the end of the day, with cloning, you could have just left them there, then cloned them back on the ship, so, what are you gonna do? Oh, I actually do want to point out something here about the credits, though. Just, let's fast forward down real quick. Here we go. So in the credits, they actually thank Bungie for helping out with the game. And as a kid, I never actually really knew why that was, but I did some digging now and actually found out that since they were both working under Microsoft, Bungie actually let Digital Anvil look at their code to help get the gameplay to feel more akin to Halo's system of aiming and controls. So, neat little tidbit there. In many ways, Brute Force overpromised and underdelivered, and because of that, many people dismissed the game pretty quickly. However, for those who accepted it for what it was, just a dumb running gun game with some buddies, it was actually pretty enjoyable. Sure, it didn't add anything really that unique or revolutionary for gaming as a whole, but not all games really have to, you know? Sometimes being fun is just enough. I want to thank you all so much for watching. You know, it's always such a blast whenever I get to replay some original Xbox games, especially when it's one that I played this much of as a kid growing up. And hey, you know what, if you're also a fan of the original Xbox, why don't you check out our Fusion Frenzy video we did over here to my right? Or if not that, then whatever YouTube's recommending over here to my left. Either way, thanks so much for watching, and I hope to be seeing you again real soon.